What is up, guys? This is my testimony, and I saw my friend Kevin do one, and I thought, you know what, it'd be kind of selfish for me not to be honest. Before I start, you should definitely look at Kevin's testimony. It's very good. Link in the description. His channel's good. It'll be helpful, all of that. So I want to start by saying it's worth thinking about that there's a lot of programming away from God in society, you know what I mean, that appears everywhere in your day-to-day life, in the things you hear, the media, in TikTok, YouTube, TV, movies, everything. And it all creates these deep-rooted beliefs and stuff, and it's basically programming. It programs you away from God, you know, from His way, and that's kind of a big thing to note, because you can feel like you're kind of battling with your faith and you're resisting your own personal beliefs, but one side of that is there's a big external arm that doesn't actually come from you that's pushing you away from God, and you may feel like that's just part of your own like discernment, you know. And also just there's a lot of resistance around God, you know, like there's a lot of idea that, oh, like you have to follow a bunch of rules or beliefs, that Christians are like either hateful, you know, racist or this, that, or that they're like, you know, goody two-shoes, like, you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of stereotypes about Christians that make people just on a social level not want to become Christian. This video is also about the one God of the Bible, the one God that Jesus served, you know, the Father, I guess, the true God, the one God of the Bible. And the reason I say that is just you can kind of get yourself down certain spiritual paths where you see God in very many different ways. It's not always the same as the true God, you know. Some people see it as the universe, some people see it as like, you know, my own idea of God, some people see it as God as a metaphor, you know. And I'm just saying this video is about the actual true God of the Bible, so not that stuff, I guess. So the other thing is, if you're just on the fence or you're interested, I encourage you, you know, obviously I encourage you, but I did find myself and many other Christians kind of like procrastinating, you know, while we're on the fence, like thinking, oh, I'll do this another time, you know, I'll probably do it in a few years. And you don't know what spot, you know, you don't know what mind state you're going to be in then. So I just encourage, try it. If you are interested in this, it's all about the true God, the one true God of the Bible. It's all about Jesus, and understanding and following Jesus is a very good way to get closer to God. There's 4 Gospels called Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke, and each one of them is a story of Jesus. His teachings, his what he did, etc. They're actually very easy to read. They're not very long, but I recommend reading Jesus's teachings, because this is like the core of the Bible, and it's kind of what God wants you to do. You know, there's a lot in the Bible that suggests, like, you know, the way of Jesus is the only real way, like the core of it, the only way you can actually please God almost. And it's all about love and truth and goodness, etc., etc. Humility, gratitude, faith, forgiveness, mercy. And the other thing I would just say is pray, you know. Praying is an excellent way to come to God. Before I was praying, my life was kind of like, you know, I was trying to follow God, but I was kind of in a shambles, and praying to God was what really like helped establish that, and it took away the doubts and the worries and all of that, and there was many good reasons for it other than that, but it helps, you know. So coming to God in like a genuine way, you know, because remember, He's God. Like you can pray to Him, you can express stuff, and he knows what's up. And I always find with Christians, like, what they say is that if you come to God humbly and genuinely, and like, I think it's always a good idea to like think about it from the forgiveness angle, because like, we do all need a bit of forgiveness. We all are very flawed, even if we aren't aware of it ourselves. Even if we like act like really good people all the time, we still need it. You know, just coming to God and saying like, how can I do better, or what do you want me to do, or I want to accept you, or I want to follow you, or this or that. It's good. And I mentioned this in my Why I Believe in God video, but I think God gives you a choice. I think He gives options of faith, and I think that's only fair almost, because like otherwise we would just kind of be robots. And we have to, you know, we have to have the option. And you might say, well, how, like, what's the point of faith if I don't actually know God is real? But what you do know is Jesus' way is real. You know that deep down because it's about love and truth and humility, and they're what everything's about, you know. I don't know how else to express it. And I think everything is really built around faith, you know. There's an idea if you take one step towards God, he takes two towards you. And it is true. If you really look for it, you'll find it. You'll find many Christians in testimonies who can tell you about this stuff. You can read about it. And if you look for it, you'll find it because it's real. I'm telling you that. Oh, also join my Discord, link in the description. I'm very happy to talk to you about God or Jesus or anything like that, or someone else, or if you just want to join a Discord. It's a bit, it's not the best quality sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, beware. But yeah, join, it'll be cool. My testimony. So I was a very shy, anxious kid. I was never raised Christian at all. I never believed in God. Had quite a bad lifestyle really, but I was fairly happy, you know. Always seeking pleasure, especially when I was a teenager. Constantly seeking dopamine and seeking. My life was kind of based around that in a way. I was a bit superstitious as well. I was very into like lots of like stuff to do with like luck, you know, divination, like, you know, making decisions from like random number generators or this and that, and like you know, maybe interpreting signs or just like loads of stuff that the Bible really says you shouldn't do. And you know, I'll just say now that all of that was like really bad for me long term, and like really bad, and I recommend you know, turn away from that. And if that made you uncomfortable, you know, if you're into that sort of mystical stuff, anything magic-y, you know, even if it's not like crazy, you know, I recommend coming to God, because I can tell you, like, it didn't help me, and it was taking me very much away from God in many ways. You can pray to God and you can read the Bible. What I realized about the seeking pleasure later was although it was all quite harmless on the surface, it was really damaging long term, and it was really damaging almost spiritually and for my soul. Without realizing it, it very much took me away from the realness of being. It like blocked my mind from clear truth and clear love. You know, it's only going away from that, you know, it's kind of like when people say they have bad times, and it's only in good times they realize how bad the bad times were. It was only going away from that constant mindless pleasure that I realized how bad it was, and I realized what I was missing, because I had a lot of drives during that time which kept me away from God and kept me towards things which were very bad for me, because like deep down I was just seeking the pleasure and the thought of stuff like God, or that clear life, you know, that way. It made me uncomfortable because I associated it with the discomfort of not having the pleasure. But I learned that that was a lie. If you ever have that feeling, which I did before I got into Christianity and before I read the Bible, which was kind of like a fear of rules and a fear of sacrifice and a fear that you're going to have to turn away from what makes you happy, that thought is a lie. And you don't have to turn away from happiness. You know, when I went away from this mindless pleasure-seeking lifestyle, and I made some sacrifices for Christianity, nothing crazy, but I thought it might be a bit like, you know, I wasn't sure about it, but it made me feel pleasure day to day. Like life was very much more pleasurable. I was happier, I was more confident, I was stronger, I was sharper, I was more content. Like my life was 20 times better from getting rid of these things which I thought would make it worse. Even if there is a bit of short-term discomfort, like if it's the truth, then it's the truth, and that short-term discomfort will be very much worth it. So yeah, I'm glad I went away from that stuff. I quit prawn, for example, and obviously my mind was telling me like, no, like if you don't do that, it's gonna be terrible, you know what I mean? If you don't watch those videos, it's gonna be terrible, or this and that. But I found out by quitting, everything was better. Everything was better. It was a complete lie. And there's many more examples. Like your mind plays many tricks. Your mind has many lies. So just be aware of that. What I am trying to say is you gotta separate yourself from your thoughts sometimes, and realizing that like your thoughts aren't always you. Can often come from these external drives and these drives and these feelings, which, you know, like stuff that's just very of the flesh, you know, very like how drug addicts, like they'll have many rationalities that keep them addicted to drugs. It comes from that internal feeling, but it's not worth it. And just thought I'd give you some background. I had OCD, but quite bad OCD, not in the cleaning my room type, but in the like I had to do certain like mental rituals and certain things to almost feel like I was stopping bad things from happening, and I was very like superstitious and anxious and like constantly fearing stuff like that, like all the time. I guess I always felt in my life like stuff like just felt too way certain things lined up and the way certain things happened. It made me think there's no way it was just like natural, you know, flowing on a rock and this is all chemicals and this and that. It made me very much feel like there was something higher going on. I realize now that the world works in many ways, in many spiritual ways, but at the very top of that is God. That's the thing to focus on. In a way, actually, going into spiritual stuff that isn't around God and isn't around Jesus can actually like take you away from that in a way, like take you away from the truth, because you're only getting part of the truth, you know, like if you're into like New Age or the universe or whatever, you know, that kind of spirituality, other forms of spirituality, you know, like esoterica or you know, worshipping other gods, you know, or anything mystical, anything to do with magic or like, you know, whatever, interacting with spirits, like the Bible says kind of not to do that. And but yeah, I also had the period of YouTube where I was uploading every day and I was very focused on success and views and like material gain, and that kind of really was bad for my soul. It was very it made me very selfish. It ruined my personality, and it just took a lot like away from me in like a real sense, or like it blocked out a lot of it was just quite bad energy actually, in a way. Obviously I'm very grateful for it and it was very good for me in many ways, but it's just like I look back and that over focus on the success stuff and the gain was just no good for me. But there was many good parts of that. When I was in that mind state, especially when I was blowing up and making videos like every day and like, you know what I mean? I very much felt like I was away from God's way, like looking back. So in the start of 2019, I got into self-improvement because I was basically just sick, like looking negatively on myself, you know? And I started doing a few things. I started quitting bad habits, getting rid of like that mindless pleasure-seeking mindset, and doing things more towards my purpose and facing anxiety and facing discomfort, trying to live better. It was amazing for me. It was so good. It was honestly like, I'm so grateful I went through it. Kind of realized that it was very aligned with religion, Christianity especially, like that going away from like what's bad for you basically, and going towards what's good for you, and I realized it came with a lot of contentment, and it was very fulfilling. But then I got into Jordan Peterson's videos, and he's very good at explaining religion and spirituality and Christianity in a very physical way. I would take him with a grain of salt because I think he's, compared with a lot of the Christian teachers I know, he's a bit too physical on the side of human wisdom. Although he's very clever, it can just sometimes like mislead you a little bit, but it's good, and it helped me. And it helped me with my life a lot. But what he did do was explain the concept of God in a kind of metaphysical sense, and I don't actually think it is completely right, or from my memory. Like, he was maybe pushing a bit too many metaphors, but it was good for opening my mind for this concept of God being actually rational, applicable in our lives, and like something we can follow, especially through Jesus, and turning away from what we know is wrong and turning towards what we know is right. And I just want to say, I don't think you can truly do that without reading the Bible and praying, but because God is real. So you have to actually turn to him, you know what I mean? I realized this from my own mistakes. Like, I was treating God, I kind of knew he was real, but I was treating him a bit like a metaphor, and it was quite disrespectful, and it took me away from the truth, and it allowed me to be led astray. So I'm just saying, like, learn from my mistake, like, just come to God, man, like, and there may be a lot of resistance, but there's resistance before you do it. And then when you do it, you're like, oh, that wasn't bad at all. Yeah, you know, some of my fears were like, it's gonna mess my mind up or this and that. It wasn't. It was good for me. And even when I came to God and I prayed and I read the Bible, like, I could still think it through and I could still be critical. There is that thing about people saying the Bible might have been changed, or it could have. The good thing about believing in a omnipotent, like, all-powerful God is you kind of know that even if, I'm not saying it's true, but even if someone's changed a little bit here and there, God is going to keep what you need to know intact, and he's going to keep the Bible intact. You're going to get what you need from it, and you can actually pray not to be led astray, not to be misled, and for clarity. You don't have to worry. I've read the Bible, you know what I mean, and I prayed about it. I can tell you, I'm pretty sure, like, when I read it, like, it felt real. It felt like God's word. It felt right. It never felt like any of it was really trying to mess with me, you know what I mean? But you've always got to be like a tiny bit skeptical, you know? There's commentaries for everything on the Bible. You're gonna have a lot of resources and people to talk to if you're ever interested in it. In my journey, I started basically with this idea of God in my head. I started doing things which aligned with the way. I thought, you know, if I do this, maybe it will transform my world. And maybe I'll see things differently, and maybe it will be one step towards God, he takes two towards you. And lo and behold, it actually was, it happened. It was right. It really did. It's crazy. I'm not lying. It transformed me for the better. I'm so grateful. Like, I wouldn't change a thing about that. It felt like truly the best thing that ever happened to me, like, in so many ways. And it kind of felt like it saved me, like, my soul in a way, you know what I mean? I don't want to make any big claims, but like, you know, like I look back at the paths I could have taken, and it could have been like real bad. So I'm grateful. I did these steps, acted like there was God, and I kind of thought there was. Realized that it was helping me, and I was kind of getting feedback, and it was right, you know, it felt good. And then later on in the year, in 2019, I got into like trying to work out what's going on with the world. I guess you could say like conspiracies. It's pretty mad, and it made me realize like a lot of the powerful people and entities and companies and institutions and governments, powerful establishments are kind of evil. So you know, it made me think like, oh, if they're evil, maybe there's a good side, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? Like there can't really be evil without good. It's worth thinking about. And I learned about the world, and it was crazy. A lot of conspiracies you find are actually real, not all of them, and you know, it's often mixed with a lot of like kind of schizo stuff, like lots of esoteric stuff and lots of stuff about psychedelics and aliens and we're in a matrix and simulation, and all of that's like, you realize that's actually like spiritually bad for you, you know, that's like it's not true, and it's stuff that just kind of destroys and corrodes your mind a little bit, but there's lots of stuff that actually happens in the world, you know, unfortunately true. And I won't go into it. A spoiler alert I have with all that is basically just almost everything we're fed is lies, especially through like, you know, social media, YouTube, TikTok, any publication, anything like that, governments, even stuff through schools and university. It doesn't mean they're all just hand in hand, like, you know what I mean, in a dark cave, like even the schools are playing against you, but it's basically systematically fed into our society by very clever people and very powerful people from a very long time ago. And it's pretty mad. You should understand it's full of lies that try and make you weak, and it tries to take you away from God, and it tries to stop you believing in God, and it tries to put you more towards stuff that God doesn't like. Evil and hate and toxicity and resentment and, you know, extreme lust and extreme selfishness and this and that. And it does it in very clever and subtle ways. And with all of this in mind, it's just another little factor that's like, God is actually real, and you know, these people are trying to go against him. A spoiler alert for all that stuff, all that area is just it doesn't actually really matter that much. Just come to God, and it kind of shortcuts all those problems in many ways, because like you gotta realize like the first person you gotta take care of is you, and the way you do that is through God, believe it or not, and through Jesus. And if you can't do that, well, you know, there's only so much you can do for others in the world and stuff. You know, praying to God and reading the Bible and accepting Jesus and coming to God, like that's all you need, especially if you add truth into the mix and you are open-minded and you are critical and you do hang around Christians and all of that. Like it will be good for you, and it will sort out all those other problems. So anyway, I got into that, and then funnily enough, the pandemic happened like a few months after, actually. Maybe 5 months after-ish, and that was interesting, gave me a lot of perspective, and obviously like I think that was all like a lie too, to be honest. I think it's very like there's a lot of factors, but basically it's another element of establishing ways to control us and ways to make us weaker and ways to manipulate us. And there was so many lies and so much like stuff fed into us, especially stuff that actually like fed into the belief that anyone who questioned it was like wrong or crazy or bad intentioned or like a liar or whatever, or gullible even or whatever, and there was many things about that, but the whole thing was like it was off, you know, it was a lie, it was wrong, it was genuinely wrong. I'm not trying to really persuade you here. So that all made me pretty skeptical, and it made me think like it's one of those reasons to follow God, you know. But anyway, I got more into trying to follow God, and it just grew and grew and grew. And a lot of things happened which felt very, very right. But I was doing all this, and I wasn't praying, and I wasn't reading the Bible. I was just trying to like follow the way, you know what I'm saying? And in the long run, that was bad for me. And then at the end of 2020, like I went quite like hardcore, like trying to follow the way and sober. I was so extreme with it, and I was like kind of like a Pharisee, you know, like all focused on the rules and not the actual point of it, not the love, not the truth. I was worried about my diet, and I was making my own rules and this and that. It was all like very harmful for me, very pointless. I was actually like, it was a really rough time. It was really bad for me, and like I was trying to follow God without actually turning to Him, which is actually like all the self-righteous energy combined with bad energy you have in yourself and all your flaws and all of that especially lingers when you don't come to God and you don't accept God, you don't accept Jesus, and you don't ask for forgiveness and try and repent, you know. You maintain some of that bad energy. That's what happened to me. It was real bad for me. It was real bad. But I was doing this, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I started slipping into like sin that I didn't even realize was sin. Which was even worse with the self-righteousness. Started like looking for signs and trying to work out exactly what God wanted me to do, you know. I was like, rather than using what God had given me to make decisions, trying to do the right thing and trying to follow Jesus and Jesus's teachings, which is all you need to do if you're in doubt or you feel silence from God. Like the Jesus is right there. His teachings and his gospels are right there, and that is the core of Christianity. So I highly recommend you look at that. But I guess without praying, like I couldn't really understand that, you know. But that's what I was doing while I was making decisions. I was trying to work out in my mind, in my thoughts, what God wanted me to do, and it ended up festering into like looking for signs, you know, and interpreting omens, which is a sin, and it really brings many bad things, much bad energy, and many curses, I believe. And that's kind of what happened. Like it really messed me up, like really, even just on a psychological level. I thought about how it like really primes your brain to see like things in reality which are like unrelated to anything else, and it just makes you a bit schizo. But that's interpreting omens. That's if you're like thinking about something and then a book falls off a shelf, you know, and you're like, oh, that means I have to do that. That line of like an external sign, you know what I'm saying? So I was doing that. Oh, you know, like this is happening, so I have to do this. And I was trying to think like, this is what God wants me to do, and this and that and that. And I was not praying. All I had to do was pray and read the Bible, except that I wasn't going to know for sure. Try and do well, try and make a decision that Jesus might have made. And I could have done that, but I didn't. And I was in all that mindset, and I just got crazier and crazier, you know. My mind was all over the place. I was trying to work stuff out. I was like really intense and hard on myself, and I was like guilting myself and shaming myself for no reason. It was a really rough patch in my life, and like I was worrying about what I was eating way too much. Like I was trying to master my diet. And a funny story, the start of worrying about my diet, I was worried. I was trying to work out how much mercury I was getting per week. It was like kind of stupid, but I was googling 6/25 to get like the daily or the weekly number. I can't remember exactly, and I was googling that, and just ran like the first result that came up on Google was Matthew 6:25, which is one of the books of Jesus, and it's Jesus saying, "Do not worry about what you eat or drink." That was crazy. That literally, like, that felt like God was speaking to me, and I obviously believe he was. And what's terrible about that is I didn't listen, and it made my life like real bad. Like it gave me a lot of grief, you know. I even like was in eating disorder territory for a while, you know, and you could say like, oh, that's like, you know, that's just your brain doing whatever, but it was this combination of things that I was just doing very wrong, where I wasn't trusting God, and I was trusting my own understanding and myself, and I was trying to treat God like a genie or an oracle, by trying to work out what he wants me to do and get him to make the decisions for me, when although he does make the decision, he works through you, you know. And it's about praying to God, the true God that Jesus served, reading the Bible and reading what Jesus said, trying to do the best you can, or the right thing, or whatever in a given circumstance, not worrying about what you can't control. You are given the ability to make decisions for a reason. You can trust God and you don't have to worry. And do not worry about what you eat or drink was followed by just do not worry about your life. Don't worry about stuff you can't control, basically, and who by worrying can add an extra hour to his life or something. So I got into that, and then it just descended, and my mental health was terrible, and I went through a really bad time. Weird stuff happened to me. It was really weird, and if weird stuff, I won't go into it, but if weird stuff ever happens to you, you know what I mean, God is always there for you, and you can pray to him, and you can read the Bible, and I guess you gotta stay grounded. You gotta not get hooked into your thoughts. I was convinced of some very things that my mind was telling me, and that was kind of, I was seeing patterns in what was happening around me, and I was convinced of certain things that actually weren't true. It's about staying grounded and like doing what's good for you, you know, like it really helps, like, you know, exercising and socializing and these sorts of things, like just the groundwork, you know, not doing bad habits, staying away from like the drugs or whatever. Coupling with that is much more important, turning to God and putting your trust in God and not worrying, and accepting Jesus, and you know, like there's the idea that Jesus is way and God's spirit, you know, it regenerates you and it transforms you, and it keeps you away from that icky and that messed up stuff and that bad energy and those hazy and scattered thoughts, and it's very very powerful. Jesus saves, really. And yeah, just reading the Bible, turning to God and praying. That's the thing. Not worrying, because I was going through this stuff, and it just made me descend, and I should have just took a step back and not worried about these things and prayed to God, but I didn't. And I should have came to God for forgiveness and repented, and you know, all of that. Kind of like horrible, like looking back, like I was doing a lot of things which were very against the way of God, and it was bad for me, and I'm like, I'm very regretful of that. I'm very regretful that I was so prideful that I couldn't just pray to God. You know, I was making up all kinds of rationalities, and that's what happens with your mind, is it rationalizes things sometimes to get you to not pray and stuff. My mind was almost wrestling me into it getting worse and worse, and you know, the turning point was when I kind of just accepted that I shouldn't be trying to outsmart everything, I shouldn't be trying to work everything out, and I should accept that whatever happens, happens. And I just sat back and I was like, whatever happens, happens. And I was kind of like, without knowing it, I was leaving it in God's hands. But I still wasn't praying. And after that, it got better. And I gradually got better. During this time, I had like multiple days of no sleep, like 5. And it was terrible, messy. And God saved my life many times during that time. Like, really, looking back, he did. I'm grateful that he did that, because I wasn't praying to him. And you know, like the idea is you pray to him and you express that, and it kind of like it lets him in, you know, it lets God like, you know, he gives you that choice whether or not to pray for him. So praying for him is accepting him, and then he can help you and heal you, you know. But I wasn't praying, but he was very merciful on me, and he saved me, and like he really did. But God is patient, and he's also fair. So like you know, like during that time I was doing many things which I kind of knew were wrong, and I was doing the interpreting omens, and I was doing the lack of trust and self-righteousness, and I was in a very bad state for many reasons. You know, I messed with stuff like the third eye and all of that, like stuff that you just shouldn't get into, because like all you need is God, you know. I just realized like God was very merciful to me, and like he's patient with you, but you've got to accept him if you actually want to receive his help. Like as I said, the stuff was still going really wrong for me. It just felt like wherever I turned, like something was going wrong in my life, and like it showed that God wasn't just letting me get off the hook, because that would actually be unloving, you know, if everything was just okay, even though I was doing all these wrong things, because eventually that would result in my soul going away from him, and my soul going away from his way, and you know, me kind of dooming myself and dooming where my soul goes, like after everything. And it would be almost unloving for there not to be some consequences to what I was doing, to show me where I was going wrong, and consequences to not accepting him when I knew I should have, you know. So that's what I'm trying to say. And when I did start praying, it was amazing. It was the best thing, like really. So anyway, after this, I was slowly recovering from this time. Like it just messed with me, it wiped me. And like a month after or so, I started reading the Bible, the Old Testament. I actually recommend you start with the New, because although the Old Testament is good and it's loving and it's very misrepresented, the more you read into it, the more you understand the undertones that he really was loving. You just gotta like pray about it, try and get the point. Because it's the Bible, there is a point. It would have been better for me to start with the 4 Jesus Gospels, either Matthew, Mark, John or Luke, and follow Jesus' teachings in the New Testament, because that was it's much more the core and the spiritual values of God. It's much more about love and truth and humility, and it would have been efficient for me. Like, it took me a while to accept Jesus because I started with the Old Testament. I actually had a dream where it felt like Moses. It was just a dream, but like it felt like Moses was kind of saying to me, like, you gotta come to Jesus, you gotta accept Jesus. So Moses is the Old Testament prophet, But anyway, like I started reading the Bible, and I started reading the Old Testament, and I started praying. And the first time I prayed, I always found some way to rationalize not praying, but I finally prayed. It was the most undeniably amazing feeling. It was just, I knew it was right. It just felt right. It didn't feel like super like elated, like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like drugs. It was like real. It was just real. It felt right. It felt like everything was just right with that. I was so happy to come to that, and I started praying more. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like one of the best things ever. Like I started just, it was so good for anxiety and worries and stuff that was going through my head, and doubts and not, stuff I couldn't control, and guidance and trying to follow God and getting closer to God and having a better effect and doing what he wanted me to do and just being better, being better in a real way, in a way that wasn't leaning on me, it was leaning on God, because that's what the Bible says to do, You got to kind of lean on God through reading the Bible and praying and trying to, understand him and understand what he actually wants from you. It's one of these ways we can almost talk to God and make requests to God, not in like a, can I have a Bugatti Veyron, but, in a good way, in a way that aligns with his way. Can you help this person or this and that, whatever. And it's also a way to kind of give your good energy to the world, I believe, not in like a sacrificing it, but really give something good, and it's a way to spread love in a spiritual way, not always relying on all your all your own stuff, all your own actions and this and that. Although actions are very important. Also, I just want to point out that the Bible does say it's faith that saves you. It's all about believing in Jesus and accepting Jesus. And I think accepting that Jesus was raised from the dead after being crucified after 3 days by God as a sacrifice for everyone's sin, that's worth exploring, because many Christians, I'm not well versed in this, but many Christians say that is how you are saved, So anyway, I was praying and I was reading the Bible, and it was good for me. And there was many examples where I said my prayers got answered, undeniably, and but in very implicit ways. They were answered all the time, like it did help with my worries, it did help with anxiety, and it was good. And I told you I grew up an extremely anxious, neurotic, OCD kid. And when I turned to God and started praying, that went away. My head started becoming very clear. I wasn't anxious at all, really. My worries went away. I hadn't had that constant fear. And my OCD went away. Isn't that weird? My OCD was cured by praying in God. It's crazy. So, yeah, I started doing that. And I eventually, just gradually, got to reading Jesus' Gospels. And it took me a while. I didn't really get it at first, and I was a bit scared and skeptical, and I thought, what if the Bible's been changed and this and that, or what if this is wrong or this, but I decided to stick with it. I prayed to God not to be misled, and I thought, I'll read it, like if it's false, like hopefully, God will help me, God will help me work that out. But I read it, and I worked out it was true. And I eventually accepted Jesus. And I remember a pivotal point on Easter 2022 when I decided to read Jesus's gospel, I think Mark or Matthew. And it clicked. It really clicked. And and it made me think about like the afterlife too. Like I'd never really like bought the idea of heaven. It almost felt too good to be true. But I still don't fully understand it. But it made me think like, oh, wait a minute. There actually might be something after this, and our souls actually might go somewhere. Oh, wait a minute. So it's worth thinking about, and that's enough reason to get saved. Like, it's not exactly, you kind of don't want to be doing it just to avoid, you know what I mean, hell, and just to go to heaven, you know what I mean. But one way some people look at hell is an eternal separation from God, and heaven as coming to God, and eternal joining with God, you know, getting your soul right with that being I was talking about, that where everything is, with the love and the truth. And if you're doing that with your soul, like that's gonna last, and that's a reason to come to God and, you know, repent, like ask Him for forgiveness, and ask Him to come into your life, and ask to what He wants you to do, and to have salvation. And being around Christians is good, and it will help you. So I eventually learned more about Jesus. I tried to accept Him more, and I started praying about that more. I started praying about salvation and this and that, joining Christian discords, doing that sort of thing. It's very good for me. Reading more of the Bible, and just understanding it more, and it just transformed my life. My life was so much better. It was content, and it just feels right. It was the only thing, and many Christians say this, it's the only thing that stopped the constant seeking, the constant wanting of fulfillment, the constant pleasure seeking, and that actually felt like it fulfilled me, and it felt like it was right, and it just feels like your soul's right when you do that. And I would seriously, sincerely recommend it. There's so many reasons, and I could try and list them all, but there's only so many you have to hear, and you'll be grateful if you go into Christianity and go into following God and Jesus. You'll be grateful looking back, you really will, and you may come across some of these reasons for coming to it that you didn't even realize, which is what happened to me, and you'll be happy with that. So, you know, that's what I would say. It's a relief looking back. I felt like I really dodged a bullet, and I'm grateful. There's many forms of resistance, there's many things that hold you back, but be open-minded to them and question them, you know, question that. And sometimes you've just gotta, pray anyway, or read the Bible anyway. That's what I would really say. It transformed me. It made me much less anxious, much less pleasure-seeking. I was very content, very clear. I feel like it made me stronger and more confident. And I feel like it was truthful, and it's just good in so many ways, and it's just so good to be able to pray to God. So that's my testimony. God bless, and don't waste no time. You don't need to. And join my Discord. It's link in the description. God's done so much for me, really, throughout my whole life. I recognize that He has, and I know He does stuff to everyone, even if it isn't always in the most obvious ways. You never know how He's really working, and if things are going bad, it can be very difficult to realize that. And it's not the easiest topic, but He still is there, and He still is real, and He's fair, and He wants you to come to Him, and accept Him, and accept Jesus. I would say that quitting prawn, praying really helped with that, you know what I mean? I started before I was praying, and I was on and off with that. I would always slip back into it every so often, but being able to pray allowed me to truly overcome that temptation, and truly do that, and God really helped me with that. It's just crazy. It just really is. Faith is very important, and with the stuff that's going on in the world and everything, it's good for that too. And I would say also, looking for miracles, praying for a sign, Jesus says, although He's going around healing people and stuff like that, He's teaching people, and He's showing His love, and He says, you won't get a sign, this generation won't get a sign. I guess one of the reasons might be that, if you, click these fingers and, something crazy happened, there was, thunder, or whatever, I don't know, but, it would kind of take away the faith, right? And also, in the Old Testament, it actually says not to test God. So if you're saying, if you're real, then do this, that is testing Him, and, you shouldn't do that. And of course you shouldn't test God. He doesn't really owe us anything, which is an important thing to remember. We owe Him, really, and praying, looking for a sign, it defeats the purpose, and that's not what God is about. It's not about a sign. It's not about a miracle. It's about Jesus and His way and His love. It's about morality, and it's about treating people good, helping the weak. It's not about all these rituals and these human, rigid side of stuff. It's about the spirit of things. A lot of people believe the Antichrist, in the end times, is going to be able to do many miracles, many big miracles, and he's going to be able to do some, mad stuff. There just seems it must be a miracle, like it must be from God. And he's going to trick many people and, you know, lead them to hell and lead them to taking this thing called the mark of the beast. Something in your right hand or your forehead, which like is to do with the number 666 or the name of the beast or the Antichrist or something like that. It may not be that clear. But it will be something to do with 3 6s or something to do with that. I don't know, like 3 hexagons. I don't know, it could be anything, right? But the idea is if you take that, then it forces you to worship this thing called the beast, which, you know, it could be a symbol for something. It could not exactly be obvious, or it could be a beast, I don't know. And, you know, everyone's going to be forced to do that, apparently, if they're not saved, if they haven't come to Jesus, if they're not saved by God. And, like, it's going to force them to worship the beast. And if they do that, then it brings them to hell. That's what it says. Like, you know, long story short, if you worship something else that isn't God, you're kind of attaching yourself and letting it come to you. Like, you take one step towards God, he takes 2 towards you. It might be the same with other stuff you worship. So if you're worshipping something that isn't God, it gives you risk to, you know, letting that into your soul and letting your soul go away from the core being of love and stuff. So worth thinking about worshipping other gods or worshipping idols or worshipping like a, you know, whatever it may be. A lot of Christians think that end times are coming, you know what I mean? Pretty scary, and it seems like some mad stuff might be happening. But, you know, it's like a mark you can't buy or sell without or something like that. It's Revelation 13, if you want to look at it. But my point of that is this evil false prophet, you know, who's actually not of God, is going to be able to do these miracles and deceive people. And it's still going to be bad. So it's even with that in mind, that shows it's about Jesus and it's about God. And you kind of ways... You got to remember you can be deceived, and that's why God and Jesus have to kind of be your North Star, like what you hang on to that you know that is real, you know, love and the Bible and praying to the true God and stuff. So a mark of the beast in the Bible is something in your right hand or forehead to do with the number 666. So you can't buy or sell without it. I feel like technology is just the ultimate like way that could happen. Like what's it gonna be, like some magic stuff, you know? Would anyone like believe that or trust that, you know what I mean? It's much more likely to be technology, you know, and we're actually getting the technology where, you know, we can have digital stuff and we can have like whatever digital IDs or this and that, and it could actually end up being inside our body or not. I don't know. But like with all this stuff going on in the technology and how good they are at, like, they got all our data and they can, how could they like control everyone like that these insane computers like AI or whatever, which it's very good at manipulating us, you know, a majority of the population is consuming digital content and online content like constantly. How easily smart computers which have all our data feed into that, swaying us away from the truth and swaying us towards this like bad thing. So it's worth thinking about. And but I don't know. It could be anything. Who knows? It makes it seem like it's real possible that could happen. So just another reason to be saved and come to Jesus, because if you don't, you could be led astray by anything. And if this like, you know, evil or bad stuff happens, like you want to have God on your side, you want to accept God before that happens, you know? You don't want to be like caught up in that. I know it probably sounds crazy if you don't believe in it, but you know, once you get into it, it's pretty mad. It's not worth worrying about all of this stuff. The point is just that God and Jesus, the antidote, you know, it's what really helps. So pray about it. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. Yeah, join my Discord, talk to me, and hopefully this hopefully this helps. And there's many other testimonies from other YouTubers too, which you should check out, because maybe you'll hear other sides.